So, I gotta do this differently, right? Because I'm not allowed to upload or stream due to another copyright strike. So, I'm just gonna do this like this.
Have you seen this guy? You know, the one that keeps telling us to...
Oh, right, I forgot that on my other account, my main account. God, oh, see how that works? Look. In just 3 hours, my premium will be paid for on my main YouTube account, the very account with the strike. Wonder how much it'll cost. I wonder how much it'll cost to how much it costs on premium.
Stop running on the treadmill.
Well, you might want to listen to this.
If you want to drop this,
Start eating more of these.
People wanting to lose belly fat should stop starving themselves and cutting out.
So apparently it's not enough that I've been gushing about this movie on social media for the past couple of weeks and talking about it like every open bar. It seems like I just can't complete my character arc unless I give you a full video review of it. So
basically, before I watch that, I need to check up my subscriptions. This is a fairly new account, so it's not a whole lot, but I'm not sure how I'm supposed to. Okay, so purchases and memberships. Here's the premium. Student plan. I am a student. One month trial. Yep, let's do that. I may be suspended from my college, but that doesn't mean I can't use my email and my connection to the college as a way to get other benefits, which I would do it anyway, whether or not I was suspended. So. I've been verified, okay? Now it's gonna redirect me. Got a whole month free, baby. I'm not adding it. Oh, damn, I gotta add that too? Shit. Ugh. Boy. Alright. Okay, let me deactivate my display for a bit. And make sure it's actually deactivated on the account. What? What is that supposed to mean? The Google account is authorized to use Google payments. What? Look, man. It says I'm live. What the hell's going on? Damn, I can't use Google Payments. Oh, it's because of the fucking school. Which that doesn't make any sense. Oh well, I guess I could make a new PayPal account. Wait, you can't do that, can you?
Okay, fine, I guess you win. Sinners is a really good movie. In fact, it's probably Ryan Coogler's best work of his career, delivering a film experience that I could best describe as from dusk till dawn crossed with blues music, which I know probably doesn't sound too thrilling, but bear with me here, it's early in the morning. The movie stars Michael B. Jordan as twin brothers Smoke and Stack, a pair of Chicago gangsters that have moved back to their hometown in Mississippi in the early 1930s, where they plan to use their ill-gotten gains to start their own blues club. Pretty soon they've assembled a bunch of musicians and former friends to get the place up and running, and it turns out to be a roaring success. Probably because black people in the area have nowhere else they're allowed to go. Anyway, things are going great until a group of vampires led by an Irishman named Remick show up to crash the party, gradually infiltrating the place and turning people to their cause. Finally realising what's going on, it's up to the brothers to gather the remaining survivors and fight their way out of the place. But will any of them survive until dawn? Now, the parallels between Sinners and From Dusk Till Dawn are as obvious as they are superficial, because ultimately this movie is going for something very different. Whereas Dawn was all about flipping the genre on its head for shock factor and novelty, Sinners is a much slower and more deliberate exploration of identity, cultures, rivalries, personal drama, and of course music. Vampires just so happen to be an element of it all. Probably the film's standout sequence for me is an extravagant blues number that sees performers from past, present and future merge together with current events in a crazy kaleidoscopic fusion of music and spirituality and vibrant emotional expression, proving the point that music truly is a unifying cultural force, and no matter the time or place, the intent behind it and the feelings it provokes in the audience truly are timeless. It's wildly creative stuff, and in the hands of a different director, it would have been easy to make it look goofy and pretentious, but Coogler clearly knew what he was doing with this one. One thing that also got people talking about this movie were the allegories with contemporary culture and racial politics, and honestly, if you can't see the obvious message behind parasitic white vampires infiltrating a prosperous and exuberant expression of black culture to literally suck the life out of it for their own benefit, then well, maybe movies aren't quite your thing. Seriously though, as much as Coogler clearly has something to say with all this stuff, it's integrated intelligently enough into the narrative that it actually enhances the film rather than detracting from it. It doesn't batter you over the head with its message, but instead invites you to consider what it might be trying to say, and that's just fine by me. The cast is superb throughout. Michael B. Jordan, who's become the Johnny Depp. As much as Coogler clearly has something to say with all this stuff, it's integrated intelligently enough into the narrative that it actually enhances the film rather than detracting from it. It doesn't batter you over the head with its message, but instead invites you to consider what it might be trying to say, and that's just fine by me. The cast is superb throughout. Michael B. Jordan, who's become the Johnny Depp. To Ryan Coogler's Tim Burton gives one of the strongest performances of his career, playing two very different brothers with conflicting worldviews, but who stick by each other when it counts. Jack O'Connell is suitably intimidating and charismatic as Remick, the head vampire stalking them. Delroy Lindo is an actor that I haven't seen in anything in like 20 years, but damn, it's good to have him back. He always brought real warmth and humanity to his characters back in the 90s and 2000s, and he hasn't missed a beat here. And holy shit, props to Miles Caton as Sammy, who as far as I know, has never acted in anything before this movie. Damn, talk about making an entrance, man. As far as criticisms go, my only real issue with Sinners is the pacing. At close to 2.5 hours, it's pretty long for what it actually delivers, spending a lot of time developing its characters, and the vampire threat builds gradually rather than explodes like in Dusk Till Dawn. The first half is like a heist movie where the protagonist has to assemble his crew for the big job, and you spend a lot of time getting to know each one of them. The performances are definitely good enough to carry it through slower patches, but yeah, it probably could have been a good 20 minutes shorter. Also, it does suffer from a slightly muddled finale where it can't seem to decide how it wants to end, so it tries like 3 different approaches, the last of which is buried in a mid-credits scene for some reason. Literally, you have to stay through the credits to find the actual ending of the movie. Why? Don't know, but it feels like a weird way to end a film like this. Really though, these are just my...
It's like, you know, most Marvel movies have a mid-credit scene and an end-credit scene. Thunderbolts has a mid-credit scene and an end-credit scene, literally. You know, first you got the, I know you had the whole New Avengers, that's the end-credit scene, right? I forgot the mid-credit scene. But this one is the same. It's just a mid-credit scene, and then it's an end-credit scene. In the end-credit scene, you don't even have to watch. It's just a solo music video given by Miles Caton.
Minor gripes, and they shouldn't detract from what is mostly a really good period movie, a solid vampire flick, and a passionate love letter to blues music and the culture that created it. So, Sinners gets a thumbs up from me. There, are you happy now? Anyway, that's all I've got for today. Go away now.
This game, you're not ready for it.
What do Ryan Coogler's movies Sinners?
I don't know if I want to watch all this shit or not. Oh, there's some I wanted to watch, yeah. I'll copy this. I'd do it a little bit different today.
In the movie Sinners, a lot of people wonder why Ryan made the vampires Irish. Some folks be like, oh, it's just a black versus white thing. Black people good, white people bad. But nah, that's not the way it was. It's not that simple. Ryan doesn't do basic. He doesn't do surface level. He made them Irish for a purpose, for a reason. And in this video, I'm going to break it down exactly why that choice wasn't just smart, it was perfect. What's the deal, my people? You know what it is, Don Tony Teflon. I'm back at you, another one. And if you like videos about the show Sinners, please do me a favor. Thumbs up this video, spread it across the realm. Let's try to get to 500 likes and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this. Let's do this. First off, Ryan isn't interested in making villains that are just evil for the sake of it. He builds systems, not stereotypes. So when he made the vampires Irish, it wasn't just random. It wasn't about bashing a group of people. It was all about history. Real, bloody, colonial history, and how horror can reflect that. And Ireland's been colonized for over 800 years. The English first invaded in the 12th century, but it was in the 16th and 17th centuries where shit got more brutal. The Irish were pushed off their land, outlawed from speaking their own language, their Catholic faith oppressed, and their food and resources exploited. And then that's where we get the Great Famine of 1845 to 1852. Over 1 million people died, not because there was no food, but because the British were exporting food out of Ireland while the Irish people starved. And that is real horror. That's history. That's a nation literally being bled dry. And hopefully that sounds familiar to you. Ryan's vampires operate the same way. They consume and hoard and leave the people beneath them to suffer. That's what colonization does. That's what empires do. That's what vampirism is. Now here is when it gets even more layered and more real. When the Irish came to America, especially in the 1600s and the 1700s, a lot didn't come by choice. Many were sent as indentured servants, basically people who worked for years without pay in exchange for passage to colonies. Some were criminals or rebels forced into servitude by the British Empire after uprisings or the lands wars in Ireland. Yet they weren't enslaved forever, but it was brutal. They were worked to death on plantations, whipped, starved, treated like disposable tools, and at one point, especially in the Caribbean and the early American colonies, Irish indentured service and African slaves worked side by side. But here's the real turning point. Over time, colonists realized that African labor could be controlled for life. You couldn't just let them work off their debt. They could be bought, sold, and even bred. And from that moment, chattel slavery, the kind that defined the American South, was born. That's where race-based slavery all came into play. And here's another twist once again. The Irish eventually got out because they were white. They could blend in. They could rise up the social ladder, and they did. 100 years later, the Irish in America weren't indentured anymore. They were cops, politicians, priests. They've been accepted into the system, but that acceptance came with a price. They had to turn their backs on all black folk, the same ones that their ancestors worked side by side with in the Caribbean. And a lot of Irish Americans became part of the very system that kept black people down through redlining, policies, politics, and labor unions that shut out black workers. So when Ryan makes the vampires Irish, it's not a jab. It's really a mirror. He's saying that these people once broken by an empire, but instead of breaking the cycle, they learn how to become the empire themselves. They're not drinking blood because they're evil. They're drinking blood because that's how they think you have to be to survive. You climb the ladder, you forget the bottom people, and you stay on top and feed forever. So let's talk a little bit about Remick, because the first people he feeds on aren't random. They are white supremacists, straight up KKK members. And that's not subtle, it's deliberate. Now here's where it gets really interesting. Back in the 1800s, the Ku Klux Klan didn't just hate black people, they also hated Irish Catholics, calling them papists, drunkards, and not real Americans. In fact, Irish Americans were often attacked in the same breath as black folk, Chinese laborers, and Jews. The KKK viewed them as threats to what they considered the pure white Protestant America. But over time, the Irish gained acceptance, not by changing the system, but by aligning with it. In doing so, they became a part of the racial hierarchy that once excluded them. So when Remick goes after those clan members, it's not just violence, it's symbolic revenge. He's not just feeding on bigots, he's feeding on the exact type of men who would have lynched him 100 years ago even as an Irishman. And now they're powerless. Now they're food. Now they're the ones being drained dry. And here's the twist. He doesn't kill them outright. He turns them. He makes them part of his brood. And why would he do that? Because that's how empires work. It doesn't just destroy enemies, it absorbs them. Remick saying, and I quote, "You called me scum, you called me less than, now you're mine. You're part of my system." That's power. But it's also a warning, because even though he flipped the script, he didn't break the cycle. He just put himself on the top of it. And you can't talk Irish history without talking religion, especially Catholicism. Ireland is soaked in religious trauma. The Catholic Church was both a symbol of resistance and repression. For centuries, Irish Catholics were outlawed. Then they were controlled through rigid systems of shame, guilt, and obedience. Does that kind of sound familiar? See, in Sinners, vampirism is treated almost like a religion. It's a ritual, hierarchy, a sense of eternal punishment. It's not about the blood, it's about control, shame, submission. Ryan is layering in that the old Irish Catholic trauma. The vampires aren't just predators, they're priests of a dying faith, feeding on sin while pretending to be pure.
That's all I know, man. Shut up on that's all I fucking know. This is shut up on.
So yeah, Ryan made the vampires Irish, and it was a perfect choice. Because Irish history has everything. Colonization, starvation, survival, rebellion, assimilation, loss, and religious trauma. The vampires all carry this, and also carry a warning. A warning about what happens when we ignore history, when we trade justice for power, when we inherit trauma and turn it into control. So no, it's not just a white bad, black good, it's deeper than that. It's systematic, it's generational, and it's the exact kind of storytelling horror needs at this moment. And I wish more people caught on to that. And that's why we need to talk about exactly what these vampires are doing in Sinners and why that matters. These vampires aren't just killing at random, it's methodical. They isolate people, they erase them, and maybe the most disturbing thing of all, they convince others to help them. They don't just drink blood, they recruit, they manipulate, they turn survivors into collaborators. And that's not just horror writing, it's historical allegory. Think about colonization, think about slavery, think about how entire systems of oppression rely on not just violence, but on cooperation. You don't build an empire with fangs alone. You need people who are willing to close the doors, look the other way, and protect the monsters in exchange for safety and status for themselves. Ryan wrote these vampires to mirror an empire. They don't storm in, burn everything down, they infiltrate, they co-op. They feed in the dark while the world keeps turning. And when people start to resist, just like in real life resistant movements, they don't just fight back, they gaslight. They tell people, you imagine that? This is normal. This is how things work. We can make this world a better place. We can make it so that there's no racism. And it's horrifying because it's true. Even in the way they feed. It's slow, it's intimate, and it's prolonged. And that just isn't meant to be scary. It's meant to be symbolic. These aren't action movie vampires, they're colonial vampires. They don't just want your life, they want your identity, your silence, your compliance. So why did Ryan make them do it this way? Because it isn't about gore, it's about power. It's about how systems eat people alive, but make it feel like a deal, like survival. And by making the process Irish, Ryan connects it to centuries of real history of people who were once colonialized, learning how to colonialize others in new lands with new names, but using the same tools. Now, before I bounce, let me address a rumor that's been going around on the internet saying that there is going to be a Sinners cinematic universe, and people have come up with pictures saying that he put these out, that Ryan Coogler put them out, but I have no proof that he has done it. I just have seen the pictures. So I'm going to investigate it a little bit further, and while I do that, I will try to figure out if this really is real, because if it is real, and I really do hope that it is, easily I could see how this could be done, and the thing that they have put up there looks like it's laying a good pattern out there, but I'm not sure it's real, so let me just really research it a little bit more. But if it is real, I will come back, I'll do another video, and then I'll do a video breaking down every one of the movies that's supposedly supposed to come out. I'll break each and every one of the titles down, what I think is going to happen during those movies, and if I think it's a truly good idea. I mean, I trust the guy Ryan Coogler, anything he comes out with, but you know this internet nowadays, I think this is fake news. I don't believe that this is what's really going on, but I will do the investigation on it, and I will get back to you with that investigation. Again, let me thank you for the support you have shown through these videos I have put out. It's been a long time since something has touched me that I can just go back and keep making videos on it over and over, especially a movie. Have not been able to do that in a very long time. So again, thank you for the support. Let's try to get this to 500 likes, and if you like the way I do this, please thumbs up this, spread this across the realm, and of course subscribe. Oh yeah, quick, I will be doing a live stream on Sinners where you'll be able to call in and talk to me and tell me what you think about the movie, and we'll do a full like 3-hour style podcast on it, and I hope that you could join us. So subscribe and hit that notification bell so you can be notified when I go live, because I want to hear from you. And until next time, you know who it is. Peace and stay sexy.
No, because
Make your browser fast.
are you sure that was one?
Make your browser safe.
He sniffs it. He went slow.
Make your browser Chrome.
I'll do this.
Choose Google Chrome for your computer.
You gotta be able to detect the subtle comedic value, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, nigga.
But it also can pierce the veil between life and death.
Ryan Coogler's rich and vibrant vampire drama Sinners has already asserted itself as one of the best movies of the year. The movie is indeed a bold reinvention of the vampire genre, filled with anticipation and horror as the story journeys into the 1930s southern United States, along with some intriguing characters. We could go on and on about all the aspects of the film that make it a masterpiece, from Michael B. Jordan's compelling performance to Ryan Coogler's metaphorical narrative, but in this video, we'll largely focus on the vampires in question. The director's take includes all the familiar vampire tropes, and yet makes an impact with the subtle innovation and cultural references. Here, we will dissect the anatomy of the vampires in the movie, and also explore the actual significance of these bloodthirsty entities. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small
I don't want to do this because I already saw it.
small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin.
You hungry as dogs.
Woof woof.
You fellers must be the owners of this establishment.
How are the vampires introduced in the story? Before we delve into further details about the vampires, we must provide you with some context, and this will mean a few spoilers along the way. Firstly, Sinners does not introduce the vampires for quite some time into the movie, and the initial bits mostly explore the journey of twin brothers Smoke and Stack, who are World War I veterans and have returned to their hometown in the Mississippi Delta after making some money in the Chicago underworld. They decide to open up a juke joint for the local black community, and their cousin and talented blues guitarist, Sammy, is all set to be in charge of the music. It's established very early in what are the basic traits of these vampires? One of the first vampires that we're introduced to is an Irish immigrant vampire, Remick, and slowly the numbers increase as he turns more individuals and they turn others. Remick is shown to be on the run from Choctaw vampire hunters from a Native American community. He turns a couple of Klansmen, Bert and Joan, into vampires, and when they arrive at the juke joint, attracted by Sammy's enthralling music, they offer money for entry. The brothers immediately sense something strange about them, and they're also guarded about the possibility of an attack from the infamous Ku Klux Klan. The story is premised during the early 1930s, and we don't need to tell you about the threats faced by the black community during these times, filled with racism and lawlessness. Stack's estranged ex-girlfriend Mary, who also happens to be there for the grand opening, offers to speak with the trio because she knows that the establishment will need the money offered by them. Remick turns her into a vampire once she's outside, but there's something that prevents the vampires from entering straight away. This is once again a well-known part of vampire tropes, that they cannot enter an establishment unless invited in some way. The story is premised in a time period where vampires are probably not unheard of, which is evident from the fact that there exist vampire hunters. The part where a vampire bite turns one into a vampire is also quite generic, and it doesn't take much time to take effect in the movie. When Sammy's love interest, Pearline, gets bitten in the movie, she has the sense to tell him to abandon her. But time is running out fast, as the effects of the vampire bite take a few minutes, as seen in the case of Stack.
Oh, we heard tale of a party.
Kind of missed the ads.
This world already left you.
What makes the vampires so dangerous? The vampires in Sinners are intimidating enough and possess certain enhanced capabilities that make them a dangerous threat for the humans. We notice the first signs when Mary is turned into a vampire by Remick, and she returns to the juke joint and proceeds to seduce Stack before biting him. This makes Smoke attempt to defend his brother and he shoots her, which has no effect on Mary. The vampires are clearly unscathed by normal bullets, and Mary gets away without much trouble. They're more powerful than the average human, and their bite turns anyone into a vampire, which, again, is something horror fans are all too familiar with. Also, their means of attack is mostly beastly in nature, as we see in the scene where Delta Slim tries to buy time for the others to escape, and gets viciously mauled and bitten to death. The attack has such ferocity that it indicates the overwhelming pull of the bloodthirsty nature of the vampires. The movie even shows the ageless aspect of vampires, as both Stack and Mary retain their ageless look when they reappear in the post-credits scene to interact with Sammy, who has now grown old. The year is 1992, which means that 60 years have passed since the night in the 1930s when it all happened, and yet the couple looks like they used to back in the day, only with a new and revamped fashion sense.
Just power.
How can the vampires be killed? The vampires shown in the movie have some superpowers that you associate with vampires in general, but they're not without their share of vulnerabilities. The first signs of their weakness are exposed by Annie, whose knowledge about the occult and rituals comes in handy. When Stack is turned into a vampire after getting by Mary, Annie chases him out with pickled garlic juice. This weakness against garlic is also a familiar mention in the greater vampire lore. She also tells the survivors that a wooden stake or silver can kill vampires, and she's the one who informs them about the basic rule of vampire engagement, that they cannot enter a building without prior invitation. She also has a talisman for Smoke that has the capability of warding off vampires. Lastly, we see that the vampires in Sinners are extremely susceptible to sunlight that can kill them. When dawn approaches, it's the final nail in the coffin for the vampires out there, and Remick and the rest of the vampires are all destroyed in the night. In the post-credits scene, when Stack and what is the vampire society like? What makes it an alluring option for the human? Now, this is where Ryan Coogler strays from the ordinary and makes his story unique. There's something alluring and magnetic about the vampires and their impact on humanity, but Sinners takes it up a notch. We get to witness some of the sensuous charms of the vampires when Mary seduces Stack, and then bites him to turn him into a vampire. However, the real manipulative power is out in the open when Remick unsuccessfully tries to cut a deal with the surviving humans. His appreciation and admiration for Sammy's musical talents is evident, but what he really uses to lure the others is the promise of freedom. He claims that the vampire society is free from racism, and this is an inclusive community where skin color doesn't matter. It's the choice to get rid of the horrible societal norms in that era, and those present at the juke joint have all suffered the horrible conditions. Of course, there's another major point of attraction for anyone who's willing to be turned into a vampire, and this is immortality or agelessness. On the downside, Remick warns that Hogwood, who is the local clan boss, will arrive in the morning and kill them all if they don't accept the offer. All in all, it's the promise of a better standard of living as a whole, where an oppressed individual will find more acceptance and appreciation besides the gift of eternal life. And we have to say, it's a rather intriguing choice, even though Remick's proposition doesn't succeed.
And you are? We just came here to play. Here, I'll show you.
What is the relation between music and vampires in Sinners? There's an intricate relationship between the vampires in the movie and the mesmerizing music that is prevalent throughout the film. The magical blues summon the creatures of the night, and Sammy's talents in particular are what the leading vampire Remick is after. While his music attracts the malevolent beings, it's also a cleverly orchestrated narrative that shows the desire to take over black culture. His guitar is symbolic of the power of black music, and while it can soothe people, it can also attract unwanted elements.
That ain't your brother.
What do the vampires...
There you go.
I had to ponder the fact that I didn't know what to write about for this video. I saw the Thunderbolts and was blown away. So when I arrived home and got ready to write a script, I felt lost for words. I wanted to talk about so much that felt so right about this movie, but the problem is that I couldn't for the life of me focus on one character because I was wowed by so many aspects of this film that I felt like I couldn't prioritize a specific character. So I'm actually going to try talking about everything I want to in the how to write style, but all in one video. I've narrowed down my thoughts and explanations down to the escalation of John Walker's character, Yelena's progression, and of course my favorite aspect of this film. But we will get back to that later. So instead of having a long intro, just remember that YouTubers like it when you like, comment, and subscribe, so do those things and let's just get started on the first segment of this video about how John Walker teaches us how to redeem a character. So I'm not going to act like I loved Falcon and the Winter Soldier. It's a fine show at best, but I've always been a big fan of the idea of John Walker. You see, a small aspect to why the Thunderbolts shocked me overall was that it reminded me a lot of one of my favorite shows right now, The Boys, where you don't necessarily have a good guy, but you have guys that are better than others. John Walker is that guy in this new movie, now that he has more of a time to shine. In the show, he was an anti-hero. He had the will to be Captain America and he had the skill, but his way of executing his plans wasn't the same, which made him unpopular. Now, in the Thunderbolts, aka spoiler alert, 3, 2, 1, The New Avengers, we get to see John's life after the events of the show, where we learn his kid was taken away from him and that he's still haunted by his past actions. What I like about John is he doesn't actually say he regrets what he did, but the audience pieces together that he regrets it through his flashback and later on when it's revealed his kid was taken away from him. You see him earlier just trying to get through life like how Yelena was, feeling about permission. But then you come to understand that John isn't void of trying to help because he was picked to be the new Captain America for a reason. In the end, John having a character redemption works when we understand his perspective of what he went through from being an anti-hero to an underdog hero. Alright, now let's talk about Yelena and how she teaches us how to progress a character arc. Coming from Black Widow, Yelena never really got a big moment to shine, even with her feature in the Hawkeye series, because she never was the main character. After all that time, Yelena gets the spotlight finally, and has the chance to develop her character even more, and that's something I appreciated about her. During Hawkeye, she wasn't someone we were supposed to be rooting for, and even in the beginning of the movie, she's committing a terrorist attack. In no situation should we be able to go from blowing up a building holding an experiment that could revolutionize the world to sympathetic main character, but somehow they do, and it's simple how they did it. You see, Valentina is the bigger bad in the scenario. We find out that Yelena is actually destroying property with permission from the owner, who we find out is on the verge of impeachment after being accused of taking desperate people off the streets and experimenting on them. So in a way, it takes some negative reception off of Yelena since she's just following orders by someone else who's giving her permission to destroy her work. But we find out progressively through the political side plot that Valentina is no saint, and instead is a narcissist that's trying to fight correct allegations. This also helps us learn more about Yelena as a person too, since she does her whole operation with a blank face and shows up to her dad's a year later crying about how she hates her life. Unlike John, we learn that Yelena has deep regret for what she does really early on in this movie, since she is responsible for the death of her childhood friend Anya. To explain a little bit more about what regret can do to a person, Yelena is feeling depressed, feeling like there's nowhere left to go, and although a sensitive topic, is hinted to be thinking of Odysseus spelt backwards. Her regret strengthens her character arc now that she doesn't have Scarlett Johansson to fall back on, and explains why she sounds so miserable all the time. It gives her a purpose to be the main character, why she's arc now that she doesn't have Scarlett Johansson to fall back on. Regret strengthens her character arc now thinking of Odysseus, nowhere left to go, and although a sensitive topic, is hinted to be thinking of Odysseus spelt backwards. Her regret strengthens her character arc now that she doesn't have Scarlett Johansson to fall back on, and explains why she sounds so miserable all the time. It gives her a purpose to be the main character, especially when she is able to understand the main villain of this movie, but I don't want to talk about you-know-who for a small segment only to talk about him again in a moment, so we're gonna have to skip over his portion of the movie until we get to Yelena and Alexi's talk in the very end. Their talk drives home the messaging of this movie with how, although you may feel like nothing and feel you don't matter, everyone has a purpose no matter how hard you may have messed up in the past. Yelena's choice to face the literal darkness is the moment I knew this movie had a clear grasp on what it wanted to be, and proved to me that Yelena is a developed enough character to lead a film and a gang of misfits. If Yelena was not included in this film, I don't think the morals and plot of the story would have been able to get off its feet, even though I'm sure some of the other characters besides Taskmaster could lead their own film. Now, it's the moment you've all been waiting for: how to write a character out of a movie.
Albion Online is a sandbox MMORPG in which you write your own story instead of...
Yeah, so Taskmaster just dies immediately after having her face get shown to the audience. Now, if you haven't picked it up, this isn't the main thing I wanted to talk about, but, you know, it's it's really funny that Taskmaster, oh my god, Taskmaster is a part of a lot of the marketing of the movie, only to be killed after a minute of being on screen. It's clearly a comedic choice, and it works pretty well since more characters to the story wouldn't have gone over well since, you know, Ghost wasn't really developed that well, and also seems to show the audience that this movie is gonna throw some punches, that people you might have thought had plot armor might actually not. So it sets up a good shocking moment to show that no one is in. Hey, and speaking of... You know Omni-Man, the Superman equivalent who actually turns out to be a not cool dude? And while we're at it, you know Homelander, the Superman equivalent who actually turns out to be a not cool dude? Well, something that may be my favorite plot point of the entire Thunderbolts movie was that Marvel introduces the Superman equivalent who actually turns out to be a not cool dude. So let's finally talk about how Sentry/Bob teaches us how to write a twisted villain. Now, keep in mind that although Bob is technically Sentry, the dark version of him we see later is only a fragment of Bob's depressed mind and not who he actually is. We talked about Odysseus spelled backwards earlier, but we find out that Bob is also very depressed, since he has signs himself up for an experiment to make him a better version of himself. Within a very short amount of time, though, Bob gains powers stronger than any other Avenger. This film explores the fact that Bob is unstable. He was born from Ox to be the hero, but after exploitation became the villain. He turns on Valentina and Yelena even after both of them tried to help him out, even if it was for their own personal gain. We're also given glimpses of his life when we enter his mind and see the stages he goes through, from being in a toxic household, struggling with addiction, and finally giving up and trying to find purpose with Ox's experimentation. Bob's struggle is characterized by this thing called the Void, which turns out to be the literal darker side of his subconscious, and the one that takes over when Bob realizes he can't trust anyone after being almost killed. If you haven't picked it up already, Thunderbolts is all about mental health. Its main messaging, and a way all these characters relate to each other, is that they're tired of feeling like crap all of the time. Bob's characterization leads him down the path that once he feels there is no one left he can trust, he loses his will to live and gives into the voices, which is a metaphor for Odysseus backwards. The thing with the Thunderbolts is that Odysseus and the voices are characterized by the void being negative space in every shot it's in to emphasize the emptiness Bob/Sentry feels and that on the outside there is nothing left to save. On the inside though, we find out more about Bob and his household and addiction problems until we actually meet the void. Bob standing up to the void and starting to beat it up confused me at the time, because Bob's happy side was being consumed by the void as well while he was doing that. After a couple of minutes of reflecting on the movie, I realized that if Bob were to have killed the void, he would have basically committed Odysseus, and if he turned into the void while he destroyed the void, he would be lost forever too. Thankfully, Bob is held back by the Thunderbolt team and is able to reverse the damage that's done in the real world, but sadly, just because it's reversed doesn't mean that the void is gone. The void and Bob are the same person, but they're two different consciousnesses in one body, and destroying one for good would be destroying the other. But the message overall is that people can control their darker sides. Scars are permanent, but they can heal and can be managed carefully, which is what Bob is doing by not using his new powers again. I'm sure later down the line, the void will return, but the cost could be horrifying and should only be used for when something big happens, wink wink, nudge nudge, clears throat, Avengers Doomsday, and Secret Wars. Overall, after talking about everything I could possibly want to talk about with this movie, I just want to say that I am ecstatic that this movie is able to subvert the usual Marvel formula and deliver one of the best Marvel movies since Endgame. I'm still willing to fight and say that Guardians 3 was a tad bit better, but that's not a diss to Thunderbolts because I am purely wowed and wouldn't have it any other way even if it had a slow second start in the beginning. The reason I didn't break up this video into 3 was the fact that Marvel stuff on this channel doesn't do the best, and if this video only gets 1,000 views in its lifetime, at least I won't feel like I lost the opportunity to talk about everything I adored about the character work in this movie. Hey, also make sure to like and subscribe for more Marvel content if you actually want it, and comment what you thought of the Thunderbolts because I'm always curious to see how others reacted. With that said, thank you everybody for watching. I'm Enchanted. Bye.
Yeah. Stone Town Galleria. Oh, you die. You're absolutely right. You are absolutely right. Fight or flight? Well, it starts at 12:15. And 2 solid hours. Trailers won't start until about 12:20. Alright. 5 minutes on that. 2 hours, 2:15. 2:15 at 2:30. 2:35. I better get some rest.